Story 1, Moon, 2009. This science fiction movie starring Sam Rockwell is a true gem. It's visually minimalist but has a powerful story about isolation, corporate greed, and the essence of identity. No fancy computer-generated imagery or explosions, just a gripping story and incredible acting. I can't believe it's not more widely recognized. Story 2, Stranger Than Fiction. Absolutely love the story concept, and probably my favorite Will Ferrell performance because it relies on delivering subtle comedy from a character that wasn't over the top and screaming at you the whole time. Not so much jokes from a comedian as an awkward guy saying things he doesn't realize are funny. Some amazing emotional moments as well. Story 3, No One Talks About Ed Wood. In my opinion, it is Tim Burton's best, and people are either not aware of it or it is largely forgotten. It is full of really great performances, it is beautifully shot, and Howard Shore's score is incredible. Story 4, Searching. A missing person drama told entirely through screen captures, video calls, and such. Sounds like a silly gimmick, but it's pulled off so naturally, it makes you wonder why other movies don't do it. Very engaging, great pacing. Hooks you right at the beginning and doesn't let go until the end. Story 5. I just saw Dungeons & Dragons. Honor Among Thieves, and I have to say, when it comes to big, fun popcorn movies, this is the best one I've seen in years. This movie deserves a lot more attention than it's gotten. Story 6. Hunt for the Wilderpeople. I don't understand how this movie didn't get more notice. Extremely funny, tender, and a great action romp. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. Yes. Directed by Taika Waititi. Story 7. Ricky Stanicky with John Cena looks like it should be terrible, sounds like it should be terrible, and is probably thought of as terrible. It strikes you as something that would probably be released straight to DVD. It is, however, really quite wholesome and funny. Story 8. Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson. Eerily beautiful and creepy. More layers than a Spanish onion. Awesome soundtrack. A true original. It will definitely make you think. Story 9. A few I haven't seen listed yet. Murder by Death whodunit comedy with an A-list cast. Flight of the Navigator Disney science fiction drama for kids. The Last Starfighter, 1980s science fiction and fun popcorn flick. Story 10. The Fall. It's visually stunning, and the story is beautifully crafted, but somehow it never gets the recognition it deserves. It's like a hidden gem that people just overlook. Story 11. Jack Black is absolutely phenomenal in this film. I can't believe he didn't win multiple awards. The only thing that would have made the film better would have been a Jack Black gospel album. Story 12, Very Bad Things. An awesome dark, and I mean dark, comedy with Christian Slater, Cameron Diaz, Jon Favreau, Daniel Stern, and more. One of my personal favorites, but definitely not for everyone. Story 13. One of those films, in my opinion, which does not get enough publicity is Moon by Duncan Jones. It is an intellectually deep science fiction movie about identity, isolation, and, really, what it means to be human. Sam Rockwell is wonderful in it, and the minimalist approach only adds to the emotional punch. While highly critically acclaimed, it gets lost in the mix amidst other blockbusters. If you like character-driven storytelling, it is really worth seeing. Story 14. Speed Racer by the Wachowskis. Tragically overlooked, that movie is packed full of charm, ridiculously awesome action, amazingly colorful, and such a fun ride all the way through. Story 15. Arrival is an amazing combination of science fiction, heart-rending drama, and really thought-provoking. Part of what fascinates is the core technical challenge. As a linguist, how would you figure out how to communicate with a very alien species that has nothing in common with you at all? Highly recommended. Story 16. Frequency, 2000. A movie with light science fiction elements, time travel, and a father-son relationship. It even has a bit of that noir cop investigation vibe. It's really brilliant stuff. It's worth giving a try if you still haven't. Story 17. The Man from Earth. It's all dialogue. All takes place in the same house. No special effects or crazy action sequences. But it's captivating. A college professor is suddenly quitting his job, and his friends and colleagues throw him a going-away party, where he finally reveals that he quits his job and relocates every 10 years to prevent people from realizing that he does not age. He admits he is over 14,000 years old, and his friends gradually begin to believe him. Story 18. It's decently well known in anime enthusiast circles, but pretty much nobody I know had seen it until I introduced it to them. It's wild, hand-drawn sci-fi anime racing that took 7 years to create. Every single frame is gorgeous and has a sharp contrast between the inky blacks and the colors on screen. It's a great movie to put on when you're hanging out with some friends and having some beers or smoking some bud. It has pretty cool world building, but the plot is relatively simple, and there is a romance subplot as well. Pro tip: when they start saying T-X minutes to drop zone, that's when you chug a beer or smoke a fat bowl. Story 19. In an effort to talk to his deceased father, a young Hamid tries to contact God by dialing 786, which he believes is God's number. His life takes a turn when his call gets answered. Story 20. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, United Kingdom, 1961. I still think it's the best end-of-the-world dramatization among literally thousands of end-of-the-world movies. One of the most literate science fiction films ever made. I've watched it a dozen times and never get tired of it. It also features Michael Caine in one of his first roles as a policeman, although he is uncredited. Story 21. The Brothers Bloom. This is my favorite movie and has been for years. It had me from the opening scene, a story told as a fable or like a Dr. Seuss story about how two young brothers became a con man team. But the rest of the film is filled with tropes and references and a story with twists and turns, some of which are predictable but nonetheless enjoyable, kind of like riding the Peter Pan ride at Disneyland. It's sappy and romantic, but also tinged with regret and nostalgia. It's whimsical and clever, so if that kind of whimsy seems too twee for you, you probably wouldn't appreciate it, but if you like that flavor, you'll love it. It's a Rian Johnson con and heist film and feels like a prelude to his Benoit Blanc films, Knives Out and Glass Onion. I rewatch it every year, and every time I say, I really love this film, roughly every 5 minutes. Story 22. Wonderland, 2003. I really enjoyed this film. Maybe I'm just a Val Kilmer fanboy, but for some reason, this movie works for me even though it's at 34% on Rotten Tomatoes. Story 23. Across the Universe, directed by Julie Taymor, is one of the most audacious and visually inventive films of the last 20 years. It is a musical that sets the whole arc of the 1960s to the songs of the Beatles, sung in character in astonishingly fresh and creative ways by the cast. Half the audience could not make the leap and hated it. The rest of us watch it again and again. It has moments that now define some of the songs for me and cameos by Joe Cocker, Bono, Eddie Izzard, and others. Story 24. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Not typically my thing, but an interesting fantasy by Tim Burton. Very amazing effects and the usual over-the-top acting by Samuel L. Jackson. Story 25. Love and Monsters. Released during the pandemic. I hate the title, no really big stars, but incredible effects, well acted, great score, character development, and the themes are so good. It will stay with you. Similar vein as Dungeons and Dragons. Honor Among Thieves, but even more overlooked. Story 26. The Straight Story. It is directed by David Lynch, but it is nothing like the kind of films he is known for. It is slow, poignant, and beautiful. The kind of film you watch with your soul, not your eyes. Story 27. I saw the Need for Speed movie that came out about 10 years ago. It was pretty good, and I don't understand why they didn't make another one. It's a lot better than the Fast and Furious films that are way over the top. The film was about racing, realistic to a degree, racing. Story 28. Watched a stop-motion movie called Mad God. There is not really a plot, so I understand why it's underrated, but the stop-motion is amazing, and the visuals are terrifying. I probably wouldn't watch it again, but it is really well made. Story 29. Underwater, 2020. Everybody overlooks Kristen Stewart because of the Twilight films. She and Pattinson have both improved quite a bit since those movies. Underwater didn't do great in theaters, but it's actually a fantastic action horror movie. Definitely worth a watch. Story 30. Only the Brave, 2017 film about the Granite Mountain hotshots. Very good film about a tragedy few people remember. Also, few people know much about fighting forest fires, and this movie showed that very well. Story 31. Annihilation, 2018. The ending is kind of trippy, but the bear absolutely chills me to the core every time I watch it. The alligator or crocodile is pretty gnarly too. Story 32. Reign Over Me starring Don Cheadle and Adam Sandler. Don is always a solid actor, but Adam can be hit or miss. In this movie, Adam was incredible. He had me believing way beyond a shadow of a doubt. I could feel his pain. Story 33. Disney's Return to Oz is a very cool, dark, and whimsical movie. It is super underrated. If you want to see a child get electroshock therapy, then this is your movie. Story 34. Young Sherlock Holmes, a really dark and well-made movie, often overlooked. Nighthawks, a really tense thriller, Rutger Hauer as a psychopathic terrorist and Sylvester Stallone going against type as an indecisive cop. Story 35. A Million Ways to Die in the West and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. The casting for both is fantastic. Plus, how can anyone turn down a chance to see Charlize Theron stick a flower in Liam Neeson's bum in A Million Ways to Die in the West? Story 36. Miss 45, 1981, is considered a trashy female revenge movie, which it is, but it is also a low-budget masterpiece, artistically ambitious and fun to watch. Story 37. A Silent Voice is a Japanese animated movie that talks about bullying and depression and accurately depicts disabilities. It's a masterpiece but lost at the Oscars. Story 38. The Wrong Guy, hilarious comedy about a guy who thinks he's been framed for murder, so he goes on the run. But the authorities already know who the real culprit is, unbeknownst to him. Great premise, great execution. Story 39. They Look Like People. I've been thinking so much about that movie and how it affected me after I watched it, but also how it turns a pretty fundamental concept of fiction on its head. Story 40. Lords of Dogtown. It's about the origin of skateboarding with Stacey Peralta, Tony Alva, and Jay Adams. It features Heath Ledger and Emile Hirsch starring in it, with Tony Hawk and Johnny Knoxville doing cameos. It's quite a hidden gem, actually. Story 41. Rob Roy, 1995. Starring Liam Neeson and Jessica Lange, with John Hurt and Tim Roth in key roles. I went to it in theaters 3 times when it came out. It is in a different universe of depth, history, and moral integrity than Braveheart, which stole all the attention that year in a display of spectacle and Hollywood tropes. Story 42. Back in 2006, I think I was only one of the couple hundred people who actually saw Idiocracy when it was originally released in theaters. I thought it was amazing, but no one knew anything about it. Felt like such a shame. So the version of me from 15 years ago would have said Idiocracy. Story 43. Warrior with Tom Hardy, Joel Edgerton, and Nick Nolte. I went into it expecting a Never Back Down-esque cheesy fighting movie. I left realizing it was an incredible study on fathers, sons, and family. Absolutely incredible performances from everyone, especially Nick Nolte. Story 44. The Chronicles of Riddick. Took an interesting character from Pitch Black and created a whole system of worlds and characters. Good one-liners, great computer-generated imagery for the day, excellent creativity all around, good badassery. Story 45. Proof of Life, 2000. Outstanding plot with great writing and really good insights. Russell Crowe nailed the main character role of a professional hostage negotiator. Story 46. I'm going to have to say 2 Netflix originals. Bright with Will Smith was a damn good movie. And The Ritual. Oh my God, the monster they came up with was insanity. Story 47. I don't care if a movie deserves more attention, but there are a lot of underrated movies, in my opinion. The Specialist, 1994, with Sylvester Stallone and Sharon Stone. Someone to Watch Over Me, 1987. Ridley Scott directed with Tom Berenger and Mimi Rogers. The Hudsucker Proxy, 1994. Coen Brothers directed film with Paul Newman, Tim Robbins, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Toys, 1992. Robin Williams. 1492. Conquest of Paradise, 1992. Ridley Scott directed with Gerard Depardieu. Split Image, 1982. James Woods, Brian Dennehy, Peter Fonda. Empire of the Sun, 1987. Steven Spielberg directed with young Christian Bale. Cutter's Way, 1981. Jeff Bridges and John Hurd. The Chase, 1966. Arthur Penn directed with Marlon Brando, Robert Redford, and Jane Fonda. City of Hope, 1991. John Sayles directed. Trouble in Mind, 1985. Alan Rudolph directed with Chris Christopherson, Keith Carradine, and Genevieve Bujold. Trespass, 1992. Walter Hill directed with William Sadler, Ice Cube, Ice-T, and Bill Paxton. Ad Astra, 2019. Brad Pitt. Foxcatcher, 2014. Steve Carell, Channing Tatum, Mark Ruffalo. Story 48. Warrior, 2011. Tom Hardy, Nick Nolte. District 9, directed by Neil Blomkamp. Drugstore Cowboy and To Die For, directed by Gus Van Sant. Mulholland Drive and Wild at Heart, directed by David Lynch. The Lost Boys, Story 49, John Carter. It did have the hell marketed out of it, but very few went to see it. It's a really good movie, and Lynn Collins is incredibly beautiful in it. Story 50. Not anywhere near the most underrated, but it turned out to be a very nice surprise. Alienoid 1 and 2. It had it all. If you like time-traveling space aliens and mixing it up in the present with kung fu fighting in feudal Japan, this is your movie. Story 51. In the spirit of Halloween, I vote for Pumpkinhead, released in 1988. A backwoods man has his child killed by some reckless teenagers. He seeks out the village, who helps summon a demon to exact revenge. Great ending, excellent creature effects, and motivation. You don't hear it talked about outside of some horror circles. Story 52. I've always loved Zero Effect with Bill Pullman, Ben Stiller, Kim Dickens, and Ryan O'Neal. It's a modernization of A Scandal in Bohemia, the Sherlock Holmes story that features Irene Adler. Except this Irene is more like the mystery woman in Brazil. The director's idea of a perfect 90s pixie-haired beauty whose big line is, "What doesn't kill you defines you." The director is Jake Kasdan, who is the son of Lawrence Kasdan, writer of Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and director of Body Heat and The Big Chill. Jake would go on to direct the 2 Jumanji reboots. This is his first movie, though, and it does seem as if his description of Holmes might be a description of himself.